Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode is called Heroic Italian Climate Activists Need More Expansive, Focused Demands for Climate Stabilization. So, let me first apologize to the heroic Italian climate activist of Ultima Generazione for having to do this video in English. My Italian is okay. I can get by in conversation. I can read a fair amount, but it's not at the level where I could do a video like this in Italian. But I have been very excited and thrilled to see all of the activity that Ultima Generazione has created and the level of organization that Ultima Generazione has. And also, by the way, Ultima Generazione has a hyphenated title. So they call it Fondo Riparazione Ultima Generazione. So this video is largely about Fondo Riparazione, which is Reparations Fund, which is the main policy goal of Ultima Generazione. So anyway, just to go back to the activism, so Ultima Generazione stages many street blockades. I think I'm not 100% clear on other actions they've done. For instance, they have also focused on the Italian oil company Eni, and they've done some actions there at the offices of Eni. But they have been doing lots of. They did a blockade that involved nudity on a bridge I think it was in Rome. And so they've been trying to establish, their goal, in a way, it's admirable that they have a focused goal, or which they explain to people, the Fondo Riparazione, which is this fund, Reparations Fund. And the Reparations Fund is I think a 20 billion euro fund that is sort of a rotating fund that they imagine, or that they project what they want to create, that is funded by taxes on the polluters, and it's not to be funded by taxes on regular Italians, and this fund is supposed to repair damages to citizens, to the Italian the world of the agricultural natural bounty of Italy that is being damaged by climate change and by the fossil fuel industry, or the dependence of Italy on fossil fuels, but put in the format of being a fund for reparations, and putting the onus on polluters and on the government to be responsible for this fund. And it's supposed to, once this 20 billion euro, which is not, for the size of the Italian economy, not really a huge amount of money, is depleted, it's supposed to be regularly replenished. So it's always this fund, this is always at 20 billion euros, ready to be paid in the form of reparations for damages. So I think this idea is a little, it's not ambitious enough in some ways, and I can understand a little bit I don't know the full history of why this idea was decided upon by Ultima Generazione to be their goal. But it, to me, sort of, I think of it in a way as a little bit like a standing class action lawsuit. Now, in U.S. terms. So, in other words, I think Italy may be not as litigious a society as the United States, and the idea of a class action lawsuit, I'm not sure whether that exists in Italy or not. But in any case, it sounds like it's in a way, it's basically a private sector to private sector civil suit mediated by government, I guess. But it's an effort, I think, in a way. I interpret it, again, a little bit from a distance, that these activists are trying to avoid as much as possible the government, the politics of the government itself in Rome, or for that matter, in various regional capitals of, like Florence and so forth and so on, Bologna. The various regions have their own capitals. So, but the national capital is Rome. So anyway, it seems to me that they are now. Again, I am not familiar with every action that Ultima Generazione has done, so I don't know. Maybe they've done other actions, but this policy instrument, or this civil reparations instrument, seems to be circumventing the government. And so I did a video a week ago or so about how I think that all Eurozone, so Italy is in the Eurozone. So those who are not Italian or not familiar with where Italy, they use the euro, and particularly the Eurozone, the governments don't actually control the euro currency. They borrow, or they are part of a union of central banks that is controlled by or is regulated by the European Central Bank, and it has very strict rules about how many euros can be created any given year, or however. So that they limit governments in the amount of deficit spend, what's called deficit spending, and that's the wrong word for what it is, but. Anyway, I come from a modern monetary theory, to those who are maybe not familiar with all my videos or some of my videos. But so that quote unquote deficit is actually the government just injecting more money into the economy, or not injecting it for specific purposes into the economy. And so anyway, a sovereign, a monetary sovereign, in this case, the monetary sovereign of Europe is in Frankfurt, and that is the European Central Bank, or it's nominally a coalition of central banks, but also regulated by the European Parliament. But the control is largely in Frankfurt for the amount overall of currency, and also it has anyway. So this Eurozone has disadvantaged Italy, and Italy is because Italy has been a net importer from within the European Union, so it is also always, in some sense, running a trade deficit in Europe. And so euros are leaking out of Italy relative to, like, for instance, the Netherlands or Germany, who are net exporters in the Eurozone. So there is now the German economy has other issues, and the German government and how it operates, but they're not all sitting pretty within the euro. But the particular difficulties and particular kind of austerity and stagnation has occurred in those countries that have this net importing issue, and the net and this is unavoidable. This is a flaw of the Eurozone. The flaw of the Eurozone is that the people who designed it didn't understand how you always have, not everybody can be a net exporter and a mercantilist in the very, very old language. So that no one is going to, or not every nation in the 20 nation zone can be totally balanced in terms of its net imports and exports. So anyway, Italy has suffered a good bit from this, even though Italians are attached to the euro in some way, and they're not. It doesn't appear there's any movement to go back to the lira in Italy. So anyway, so that it's understandable then that the climate activists, the Ultima Generazione, would not be looking for an expansive fiscal policy and also a government policy to address climate as being their demand. It's understandable. The Italians feel like a little bit like they're junior partners within the euro relative to places like Germany. There's the example of Greece, so to speak. Greece was even more victimized by being in the euro and subject to extreme austerity within the euro system. So it's understandable that they want to be cautious in terms of making demands that cost money, or that are involve the use of the euro within the budgeting process of the Italian government. So, but I would suggest that the only way that the demands of the Ultima Generazione or any other climate activist in Italy will actually address climate change, will actually the idea of reparation for damages is a little bit backward looking in some way, and it is really the only way it could function. And so giving some credit to it, if it were ever implemented, it would act in a way as a little bit of a carbon tax or something of a carbon tax on some companies, okay, that would then be incentivized in order not to have to contribute to this fund but there's no metering of this fund to emissions. So anyway, so the Italian economy to cut emissions, I am someone who approaches climate action or the climate action of governments, not the climate activism, but the actual what is the where the rubber meets the road. How are you actually going to cut emissions? How are you going to stabilize the climate? So you're going to do that by some actions in the private sector, people deciding to do things differently within, but also the big chunks, many of them are going to come from government actions, changes in government policy. So now just to hold up the Dutch climate movement, which is mostly, there are a number of different organizations there, but it seems like Extinction Rebellion has been the major organizing hub there. They've had huge demonstrations that are against fossil fuel subsidies. So that's a concrete goal that I think is more in line with climate stabilization efforts. So cutting the subsidies to government subsidies to fossil fuels. So they've actually succeeded. There were enormous protests around The Hague for weeks. Okay, and they have, at least they're going to get a vote on it next week. So that's good news. So I don't want to. That is one of the very recent but major triumph of the new climate movement in Europe. And I don't want to hold that up and say everybody should have that kind of success immediately. But that's only subsidies. Cutting subsidies could be one component of what Ultima Generazione would demand, and they might have that somewhere in some paper. I'm sorry if I am overlooking that in some white paper or whatever that they've created. But focusing on government budgeting and so subsidies are one part of the government budget, and taxation policy, but there's also spending. So there needs to be, I think, in my opinion, I spent a little time in Italy, so recently this summer, but also a few years ago as well. I know a little bit about where the emissions are coming from in Italy. A little bit. I'm not a total expert, but I know that there's a lot of use of gas in homes, and there's also in an industry as well, and then also, natural gas or fossil gas. Okay, and then there's also lots of gas-powered vehicles and on the roads and so forth and so on. They have a wonderful train system in some parts of Italy, not in all. In the north, it's much, much better than the south. So there are areas where you can create a plan, a Green New Deal for Italy. So my hope would be that the wonderful energy and the intelligence of Ultima Generazione would be focused then on what is the plan, what do they want government, what in this Green New Deal for Italy. And again, some of this Green New Deal for Italy is going to involve spending on deficit. So I think, again, there needs to be, as I say in this video from 2 weeks ago, there needs to be a part of the activism needs to be oriented toward Frankfurt, toward the European Central Bank, okay, and changing the rules of that bank regarding climate spending by member government central banks. So that anyway, but creating a plan for this is what we want to happen in this case, Italy, for, for instance, rebates for electric scooters. Okay. So there are lots of gas-powered scooters, and there's lots of petrol-powered scooters and petroleum-powered cars and so forth and so on, as well as this use of natural gas. So there's a range of things in a Green New Deal for Italy that could be thought up and demanded. For instance, emulating. So Milano has decided to create a big bicycle pathway network. So this is something that could be done. It could be emulated in all cities. Now, Milan happens to be a particularly wealthy, large-ish city in Italy, and one of the larger cities. And so I don't know where how they're financing this particular expansion of bike paths, protected bike paths, so protected from traffic. But that kind of thinking, that could be nationalized in the sense of throughout Italy with the help of government spending that is allowed by changes in the rules of the European Central Bank to spend on deficit. So it wouldn't have to come out of the pockets of already cash-strapped Italians. It could be a public work. And so a bunch of public works could be proposed. And those public works also have so this is another advantage of the way I'm conceiving of this. It can break with the austerity that has strangled Italy and has led to high levels of unemployment among young people under 30 or under 35. And so this would have a stimulative effect on the economy in doing pro-climate stabilization things, doing things that are public goods, that are good for the public welfare, and not just increases in consumption, having, more Gucci bags or whatever it is that, and other consumption goods that are for but just create. But some of these goods are, like, for instance, if you had a whatever it is, a 3,000 or a 2,000 euro rebate for a electric scooter, you would be able to not have one less gas powered scooter and make it and up the market for those electric scooters, for instance. So the motorini that are often used by many Italians, excuse my pronunciation, or obviously four-wheeled vehicles, also enabling and this would require some research, how could the railways be made more user-friendly and cheaper? I mean, they're quite affordable, especially if you are able to plan your journey. The railways are, compared to the United States, amazing quality and also amazingly affordable, but there are still many Italians who don't prefer to use the train for a number of reasons, including cost and frequency and so forth and so on. Are there ways to optimize the Italian's train system as it currently exists? Can you also speed up, for instance, high-speed rail to Bari, that's in the south, in the heel of Italy, or other, in other words, the building of better tracks in other parts of Italy, or just being able to increase the frequency and getting through, so that are enabling the capital budgets by government spending on. So this is, instead of, you could call it subsidy, you could call it program, whatever, a support program for the railways to improve their infrastructure so that trains could be more frequent, faster, more convenient, so more people will be tempted to use the train. Maybe, again, I haven't done a survey of, their trains are pretty well utilized in Italy, but they could be probably better utilized. So, electric buses. So having municipal buses, be battery electric, or other, or even trolley buses, which have use a pantograph or trolley poles to access electricity from above. So that's a little bit more complicated and so forth and so on. But anyway, I think Ultima Generazione probably has enough resources and enough people. I mean, there seems to be many smart people in it and very committed people in it to create a set of demands that are actually addressing the emissions of Italy. So they're actually going to reduce the emissions of Italy, and then also, and would also, by doing stimulative, in other words, not extracting the cost of those projects from taxes, so which could potentially have a contractionary effect on the Italian economy, depending, in other words, by raising taxes, for instance, upping the doing some kind of a carbon tax or so forth and so on, is that you would request that the European Central Bank, allow for climate spending in this area. This would require, I think, Ultima Generazione needs to collaborate, or I'm not just putting it on them. I think it's on all of the climate activists in the Eurozone, or in the EU more generally, but mostly in the Eurozone, because they share one bank, or they share one controlling bank, to press for climate provisions to be able to be spent. So fundamentally, and this is just sort of one insight of modern monetary theory, that whatever is for sale or can be in Italy, for that matter, within the eurozone, can be bought by a government with the euro. In other words, or the ECB essentially. So the ECB, the creator of the euro, can create the euros to buy those things or to facilitate the project or whatever it is. Now there's a possibility they could, there's some limited resources that could then be raised. You could raise the price of those resources if there were too many projects going on at the same time that required steel or something like that, and there was not enough capacity to build the steel. But then also a program of a European Green New Deal would enable steelmakers to build new plants that would then, hopefully green steel. So in other words, steel that is zero emissions or almost zero emissions. And there are Swedish plants that are working on that. But anyway, I'm just using steel as an example. Any resources to do the work of becoming a net zero or a zero fossil emitting society. So that's what I think all climate activists want. Ultima Generazione and others. And so that requires physical work. That requires physical changes to houses and to the infrastructure of the city or of the town, so forth and so on, or of the countryside. And so that is something that needs to be thought about. And again, that letzte Generation, I don't know if I'm saying that, I have to put my German accent on, in Germany could also be working on similar. Okay. And anyway, that, project is something that could, I think, draw the Italian public to the side of Ultima Generazione, and also similarly in other countries, if they see this as a not just a subtraction of something from their economy, but the addition of something beneficial, also the addition of jobs, and also a source of employment for people who are standing on the sidelines, who and in Italy in particular, also in other countries in the quote unquote Eurozone periphery, who feel like they've been, their societies have been strangled a little bit. Their economies have been strangled by the euro, or at least if they don't perceive it that exactly by the euro, they perceive a stagnation in their economy. So this is a way to revitalize a green, climate stabilizing economy. Now, there needs to be in any of these sort of Green New Deal kind of thing, in my opinion, this is my opinion, there needs to be a monitoring of the resources that are being, partly for purposes of keeping inflation in check. In other words, how much competition is there for any given resource like trees, or, I mean, it'd be best to use only the waste products and recycled products that are already available, so you don't draw on new resources. But anyway, whatever new resource you're getting, you want to make sure that they are potentially zero emitting, or on the path to zero emitting in their production, like in producing them physically, or maybe they're even net carbon fixing, so that they're bringing carbon out of the atmosphere, like using fast growing grasses like bamboo, or hemp, or or hay, using hay as a straw, really. So using straw, which is a waste product from agriculture, to insulate buildings and so forth and so on. So there are all kinds of opportunities and details and so forth and so on in a big picture kind of thing. I don't want to get lost in the weeds. You could just simply make a demand for saying, let's cut all fossil fuel subsidies and leave it at that. But I think one needs to go beyond that, and I hope the climate activists in other countries, not just Italy, can do that. But I see in particular in this reparation fund sort of a little bit of a cul-de-sac, of a dead end, so to speak, that people are doing wonderful activism, great activism, but they're leading people to sort of follow I think it's a weird construct, the reparation fund, and it isn't pushing the Italian society forward toward zero emissions and climate stabilization. Anyway, so I hope I've spoken in a way that's clear enough, and I hope this video is a help to, if it's seen by anybody in Ultima Generazione, is a help, and I hope that it also can, be circulated there if possible. But anyway, please share your thoughts in the comments below if you want to discuss it there, or you can send, if you want to talk to me directly, I'm also at michael.terraverde, TERRAVERDE @gmail.com. And also, please like the video if you thought it was helpful or interesting. And please subscribe to Politics 2100. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.